A hero is only good as the villain. That's the kind of stuff I like to say when a hero just straight up drops the bad guys. Growing up as a kid, I would see so many different cartoon shows and read comics where there's a cool hero and a cool villain involved. And just like any kid who clearly hasn't developed their brain on what good storytelling is, I would be down with the hero and love it when the hero would straight up Falcon punch the villain out of existence. And I feel that's an experience something a lot of us can relate to, because we were waiting for seasons upon seasons upon seasons to finally see the quote-unquote final battle. And obviously, for many reasons, when there's a conflict between the story of a hero and villain, the hero stands up tall, because everyone agreed if there's a hero going to be in the story, then there also has to be a villain, in which we all know is about to get dropped at the very end. And I'm going to be honest, as I grew older and older, I'm starting to get sick of it. Like, I'm about to start my own whole villain arc by siding with the bad guys, because if I side with the good guys, I already know they're gonna win. So my emotional support would be like useless. It'd be more useless than Sakura's role in Team 7. At least with the villains, I'd be appreciated and get some form of respect. Now, the whole hero versus villain thing is fine, it's cool, but what really pisses me off is when the villain is low-key pretty strong. There are times where the supposed final villain will show up around the beginning of the show and try to deal with the good guys and almost get rid of them, but they end up getting fucked over either from themselves or other people's that's supposed to be on their side. And when I was a kid, I was always glad that the heroes escaped. But now as an adult, when I see this happen, I just feel this disappointment towards the villain, because it's like, damn, you could have dealt with these guys back when you were stronger than them. Now they about to go through this whole training arc and get set on the same level as you. And I know, the writer needs to stretch out the story and milk it for every penny's worth, or else it wouldn't be good, because if the hero just straight up died, it would just be a terrible story. But I mean, if you're gonna make a badass villain, at least make them sense the fact that when they see a problem blocking their evil agenda, you deal with it right away with their full strength. 99% of the time, the way the good guys always drop the bad guys is because the bad guys are too cocky. Like, they think they're that guy. And every time they fight the hero, they take their sweet time. And what I mean by this is that the villain will either do that stupid slow walking thing just to show themselves as the alpha Chad of this battle, or they'll just straight up start talking. A strong villain's worst enemy is the ability not knowing when to shut up. Like, imagine if you're out at night, maybe going to grab some money from your local ATM, and some guy pulls a gun on you. Do you think that guy is going to go in a full 10-minute monologue of his own agenda of why he has to rob you, only to realize that you dipped like 2 minutes in? No, he's gonna rob you fast and maybe shoot you in the leg. Nice, quick, and easy. I mean, not nice for the guy that got shot in the leg, but that's besides the point. In my 19 years of living on this planet, I've seen so many amazing stories written villains get fucked by what I like to say is bad writing, or rather the plot armor that saves the hero. And you know what, I kind of want to go down the list and talk about the villains that I think really got done dirty within their designated stories. I'll be talking about guys from cartoon shows, animes, films, and video games, so keep an open mind. I also want to say that this is definitely not my opinion. All the stuff here I say is definitely fact, so if you have a different opinion, then just remember, my word is fact and you can't argue with fact. Anyway, let's get right into it. I feel like the first guy I gotta talk about is one that we all know way too well if you were someone that watched a lot of Cartoon Network, and I'm talking about the Lich from Adventure Time. Now, the Adventure Time show actually has a lot of villains, some of which were just one-off scrap villains that the creators decided to use, while others had a more impactful play within the story. And one of those villains happens to be the Lich. This guy is like the definition of a great villain within cartoons, because one, he looks like this, and I don't know how many guys can pull up that kind of face and not be intimidating, but also the fact that he was incredibly strong and able to wield some sort of dark magic that in some cases can affect people's minds. That plus the dude didn't really pull his punches, like he had no conscience whatsoever. So you're probably wondering, wow, this guy sounds like such a cool villain. What happened to him? Well, he got dropped by a magic talking dog along with a human boy. Dozens and dozens of times. Like, I get it, and I can respect the way my man went out, but I mean, come on. Every single time when he got into a conflict with Finn and Jake, he was so close to meeting his end goal and taking these guys out. but instead of doing it quick, he takes his sweet time and decides to give this whole monologue every single time. As a matter of fact, there was this one battle where he clearly had Finn in this dark trance and he couldn't really move as much. And you would think, wow, he's really about to take out Finn. But no, he decides to slow walk to him and give the most basic ass talk about how he can't be defeated. Next thing you know, Finn throws this like white stuff onto him, pause, and he turns into this giant talking baby man. I can't with this. Furthermore, the Lich is a villain that always comes back in a different form, and you would think that he would learn from his mistakes, but no, he kind of does the same thing over and over again. And I mean, he's like the final villain of the show. I feel like the creators could have at least put more respect on him, but yeah, he got done dirty. The next guy I feel like I should talk about is Shredder. Shredder from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2012 version. Now, this version of Shredder is like the best adaptation version of Shredder in all of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. One being the fact that he's 3D, and two, there's a lot more character story development on him as well. Now, honestly, I don't really have much of a problem with this Shredder, like his writing is pretty good. The only thing is, he's super cocky. Every single time there's a problem, instead of him doing it himself, he sends his little minions to do it for him. Which, if you're a top dog in the ninja organization, I'd probably do the same thing. But the issue is that his minions keep failing, and instead of actually doing the job after they failed, he sends them again, only to fail again. And I mean, it's the turtles that are the ones that are like messing up his evil agenda. And when he finally decides to deal with the turtles himself for the first time, he beats them down and actually gets them in a corner. And you know who ends up messing everything up? His minions. Like, he gets distracted by them after them asking for help after they got mutated. And that was enough time for the turtles to escape with their lives and go through this whole training arc and finally, after so many seasons, take down the Shredder. The problem with the Shredder is that he makes other people do the dirty work for him because he thinks he's too good and too strong to deal what he thinks is like peasant work, which ended up being his downfall. Rip to the only good Shredder out there. Now, when it comes to Naruto villains, most of them are written pretty well. They each have their own moments, basically explaining their agenda to the opponent, go through this badass form, getting either beaten or talk no jutsu into a good guy, and then they get like a flashback of all the good moments before they died. And that's kind of like the formula recipe for every single villain that shows up some importance within the show. But there's this one character I feel like got done dirty the most, and that is Danzo. Danzo is like the one Naruto villain that literally no one talks about. Because one, he wasn't someone that really played a big role with the Naruto story until much later and close to around the time he was killed. But also, he's a villain that worked behind the shadows using the Anbu as a sort of cover. But the thing is, there have been so many villains in Naruto that used the shadow as a cover that Danzo actually got overlooked. Because unlike most of the villains that make a dramatic appearance, Danzo is just there. But that's not to say that there's nothing good about him. A lot of the really evil stuff he does actually gets shown in a backstory, plus the ability he has is based off the Sharingans he stole from people in the Uchiha clan. But the thing is, this guy is so used to working in the shadows that we never really see him in action. Like, we see his little organization, the Anbu, in action, but we never really see him. And the only time we see him in a fight was around the same time he actually dies. Personally, I feel like Danzo could have been a great villain if he had more screen time in the story, but whatever, alright. The next character I feel like I need to talk about is Count Dooku from Star Wars. Probably one of the most underrated villains in all of Star Wars. Now, when it comes to Star Wars villains, everyone knows the classics like Darth Vader and Emperor Palpatine, seeing how those villains basically formed an entire generation when it comes to villain characters. But the one I feel like does not really get talked about as much is Count Dooku. A reason is because if you've seen the movies, you would know that he showed up in only the last two movies in the prequel trilogy, with him being the antagonist for the second movie and him showing up for like 10 minutes in the third movie only to get his head chopped off. And that was kind of it for this character. But then Star Wars The Clone Wars came out and we got a much deeper dive into the character and we got to really see this cool version of him, both in strength and in intelligence. Even though he really wasn't the top dog villain of the show, we got to see more from him, and because of that, I feel like the way he died was kind of lame. That plus I feel like a lot of the times where he faced Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin, he could have killed him honestly, especially Anakin. Seeing how in one battle he basically got him knocked down but decides not to kill him, which was a really weird choice because that decision ended up biting him in the ass, because when you give the option to Anakin, he ended up killing Count Dooku. That plus him as a master to 2 apprentices, he thinks he's too strong, thus doesn't really need to play a big role in battles unless he actually gets told by his superior. And that's what I really hate about characters who are on the top of the ladder. They decide to let other people do the work for them and fill up their agenda, when in reality if they actually played a bigger role in the fights, things would actually go their way. And that's a trope I really hate, and it was sadly put in play into Count Dooku's character. When it comes to the hero versus the villains, it doesn't really seem fair, seeing how we all know the heroes end up winning. The perfect example of a villain being on the same level of the hero is Light Yagami from Death Note. Death Note is one of the most perfect stories when it comes to the balance of heroes and villains, with Light Yagami being the villain of the story, having a godlike ability in his hands. What makes him so good though, is the fact that he doesn't really use strength but rather his mind to expand, planning out every step of his agenda perfectly. And the same goes for the hero L. Even though he doesn't have the ability that the enemy has, his brain is a good enough tool. And even though he dies, he has a successor in place to finish what he started, evening the playing field to finally defeat Light. I love this so much, I wish other shows did the same thing here. Because even if the villain has a strong skill or power, the way they use it is what makes who they are. And I hope a lot of creators out there understand that.